That also. There's a lot of things. Okay. We're in chapter 5. We're at page 262. We're learning Likkutei Sichot for volume 1, Parshas Behar. And we'll learn it today also, but I think that we'll finish I hope we finish what I wanted to finish today. And then tomorrow we'll be able to start the Chukosai and get ready for Lag Bomer. Chapter 5. So we said last time, we asked the question, why is it that of all the mitzvos that could have been chosen, Shemitah was chosen to show that the details were also said at Sinai, not just the general rules. And so the Rebbe began to explain, and he said that an inherent part of Shemitah is also to work the land for 6 years, not just to leave it be on the 7th year. And so this connects with the idea that in order for you to bring sanctity into the mundane, you also have to run into the holiness, into the higher aspect of reality, and then you can bring down that holiness into the mundane reality. So he says the same thing happens. We do the same thing every week with Shabbos and the 6 weekdays. So during the 6 days, the weekdays, we perform what we call the work of clarification. We refine the world. But on Shabbos, you're not allowed to refine. You're not allowed to clarify. You're not allowed to select. Okay? You can't do these things. So as we said before, connecting above is the name Havaya, connecting below is the name Elokim. So that's why the Shabbos is introduced in the story of creation with the words Vayechal Elokim. Elokim finished, which can also be read as Elokim was finished. There's no more of the weekday clarifications that were done, and you're only left now with the name Havaya, which is higher than nature, which is higher than the mundane. And they depend on one another. You cannot have the weekdays without Shabbos, and you cannot have Shabbos without the weekdays. Chapter 6. In truth, Shemitah is actually on a higher level than Shabbos, in a certain aspect. In what aspect? On Shabbos, you're not allowed to do anything that resembles even the type of work that you would do on a weekday. So there are things that are not forbidden on Shabbos. They're really from the Torah, they're okay. And even from the Rabbanon, they're okay. But we added, Chazal in later generations added something called uvdin dechol, things that look like they're a category of work that somebody would do on a weekday. For instance, carrying a very heavy load, which on the face of it is okay, but let's say the load is mutar, it's not something that's forbidden, and yet still you don't do it on Shabbos. Why? Because it resembles the type of work that would be done on a weekday. So on Shabbos, a person is completely disconnected from the mundane world. There's no connection to it. But on Shemitah year, it's not that we can't engage the world in the way that we usually do. We're just forbidden from doing certain acts related to the tilling of the ground. In the world, even though it's the Shemitah year, and in a certain respect he's now elevated above the world, on the other hand, he is really exercising this state of this paradoxical state of being able to be both above and below at the same time. He's really in the world also. And still, he's also performing the run and connecting to the name Havaya. So it's not the same thing as when clarification is not permitted on Shabbos. You're not allowed to sift between things and separate them. Rather, here we can do all of the same things that we do during the 6 years that are not Shemitah. למרות שאדם נמצא בתוך העולם, בעולם עצמו ממשיך את שם הוויה נעלה מן העולם לגמרי. So he's in a state, a person is in a state of being connected to the mundane, and yet at the same time he's drawing down the name Havaya, which is above the mundane, above the physical reality. דבר זה הוא דוגמת הפירוש על פי תורת הבעל שם טוב, ושבתה הארץ שביתה והתבטלות בארץ, החדרת השביתה לתוך העניינים הארציים עצמם. This is similar to what the Baal said in the name of the Baal Shem Tov, that the earth should rest means that you integrate the rest into the earth, meaning you're bringing this higher level of Havaya into the mundane, into the physical reality. Chapter 7. כך יובן האמור ברש"י לפסוק שבת להוויה לשם השם, כשם שנאמר בשבת בראשית. And that's how we should understand Rashi's commentary on the words a Shabbos for Hashem. Shavta haaretz Shabbat laHashem. The ground shall be forsaken as a Sabbath for God. He says, for God means for the sake of God. And it's the same idea as what it says in Shabbos Bereshis, in the first Shabbos after the 6 days of creation. V'lichora. And so the question arises, Ma mosif kan Rashi? What does Rashi add by saying that it's the same thing as Shabbos Bereshis? That it's for the sake of God. What is he adding here? אלא שלפי המוסבר מובנים הדברים, כיוון שבשמיטה מותרים עובדין דחול, ויש לאדם מגע מענייני העולם, עלו מישהו לחשוב שאיסור החרישה והזרעה בשמיטה אינו עניין של הוויה שלמעלה מן העולם. כי עניין של עבודת הבירורים, דוגמת מצוות 6 שנים תזרע, של בירור בתוך העולם ולא למעלה ממנו. So he says, what Rashi is trying to tell us is that it's a Sabbath for God, for Havaya, the 7th year, means that a person might think that this is the same thing exactly like that we refrain from doing all work on Shabbat. He says, no, it's not the same thing. It's rather that even though we're engaged in the world, we're not doing certain things, but we're still engaged in the world, everything that we're doing is for the sake of integrating the name Havaya into reality. Okay? So, he's just repeating it in another way. מקדים איפה רש"י ואומר שיש כאן עניין לשם השם, כשם שנאמר בשבת בראשית. So that's why the pasuk says Shabbat la Hashem, Sabbath, 7th year Shemitah, which is a Sabbath for Havaya, for God. כשם שנאמר בשבת בראשית. It says the same thing regarding the 7th day of creation, which was the Sabbath then. הרי לפנינו שביתת הארץ שממנו תצא לחם עיקר חיות האדם, ואם כן הרי זו התעלות בהתפשטות מהעולם כשם שזו הייתה בשבת בראשית. העובדה שמותרים שאר עובדין דחול אינה אלא יתרון, שכן בתוך העובדין דחול עצמם מחודר אור הוויה שלמעלה מן העולמות לגמרי. So again, the whole idea here is that this is a greater trick than having the Sabbath. Just the regular Shabbat is to completely disengage from the mundane. But in the Shemitah year, because we're still doing things, that we still go to work, we still do all the regular things that we do, we just don't till the land. So we are introducing this higher state of Havaya into everything in the world. Chapter 8. לפי האמור Okay, but you could say that it applies for us a lot more. Because if I don't have a field, so it's just that I don't have to refrain from working the field. But I still have the Shemitah year is like a time that consciously what I should be feeling is that it's an opportunity to bring everything in the spiritual down into the mundane, because that's what it means that it's a Shabbat laHashem, that it's a Sabbath for God. So if I have a field or don't have a field, it's still a Shabbos for Hashem. It's still a 7th year for Hashem, for Yud Kei Vav Kei. So, especially maybe because I don't have a field that I have to refrain from working. So I continue to do all the regular. The person who has a field, so you can say, there's certain things I don't do. So he's a little disengaged. But I'm not disengaged at all. I'm doing exactly the same thing. I'm still writing. I'm still doing the same work that I did. I can go places, I can talk to people, I can use my phone, I can do this, I can do that. So for me, that I don't have a plot of land, so for me it's really a regular year. So all the more so that I'm bringing Havaya down into my physical, regular labor. Chapter 8, לפי האמור יובן משום מה מהווה מצוות שמיטה מצווה כללית. הרי זה תוכנם הפנימי של כל המצוות, אשר מצוות שמיטה דבר בגלוי. So he says, so now we understand why the Torah chose Shemitah to demonstrate this principle. Because Shemitah, although all the mitzvahs are meant to bring holiness into the mundane, Shemitah does it in a way that none. אדמו"ר הזקן מסביר בתניא שהעסק בתורה ומצוות והתפילה הם עניין של מסירת נפש ממש, כמו בצאתה מן הגוף, שאינה מערער בצורכי הגוף, אלא מחשבתה מיוחדת מלובשת באותיות התורה והתפילה. כלומר, בשעת העסק בתורה ומצוות והתפילה, צריכה להיות ההרגשה כי לאחר יציאת הנפש מן הגוף, אליך השם נפשי יסע. Now the Rebbe explains in chapter 41 in the Tanya, that when a person is engaged in serving God, he should feel as if he's sacrificing his soul, as if he's as if he's dying. We said this once in the name of the Baal Shem Tov, that when when a person goes to daven, he doesn't know if he'll come back. Why? Because it's as if he's throwing himself off a cliff. That's what the feeling should be like. Mitzad Sheni. So that's on the one hand. That's the run in every mitzvah that you do, running to Hashem. מצד שני, נדרש אדם שכל מצווה שהוא מקיים תהיה כתיקונה בכל ההגבלות שלה בזמן ומקום ובכל הדקדוקים שבכל מצווה. והרי כל אלו ההגבלות של העולם. On the other hand, every mitzvah requires us to take and pay careful attention to its details. And you have to do them physically. You can't just say, okay, because I'm sacrificing myself, as it were, I'm throwing my life away, as it were, with the intensity of my passion. So because of that, I can just do it any way I want. So a person says, what does it matter if I have, on my lulav, I have 2 aravot or 8 aravot? Who cares? The important thing is that I'm doing it with such passion. It's such a wonderful thing that I'm doing. It doesn't matter how many myrtle branches I have or how many willow branches I have. He says, no. You can do it with all the passion you want. You can have as much run as you want. But you also have to have return. Meaning you also have to build the vessel exactly the way that the Torah told you to. So that's what it means to be outside the world and inside the world at the same time. And that is what's called Shinyanan shel mitzvotu, that the purpose of the mitzvos is ניצול הנכונות של מסירות נפש, של השתחררות מן הגוף ומן הגשמיות, לשם קיום באמצעותם to intensify the return. It's using the energy that I'm expending and connecting to God in order to make the vessel filled with passion. But it has to be the right vessel. And that's called המשכת בלי גבול בגבול. And that's called bringing the infinite into the finite. אלא שבסתם המצוות הדבר קיים בהיעלם, והוא ניכר רק בדרך קיום המצוות, אבל במצוות שמיטה בא הדבר בגלוי, והוא ניכר בעצם מצווה. So in all the other mitzvot, we know that this is a principle in them, that you should have a run and return. But in most of them you can't see it. You don't see the Shabbat LaHashem, you don't see how it's the Shem Hashem, you don't see how it's with my passion to connect myself to God so much so that I'm willing to sacrifice myself. You don't see this in the regular in the other mitzvot, but in Shemitah you see it. You see the act itself, because what do you see? You're seeing the run, because it's telling you refrain, and it's telling you that you should use this year to connect higher, to connect with God above, and yet at the same time it's telling you should do everything you do normally, except for tilling the land. So that combination, that holding these two opposites together, it's seen in Shemitah, he says, much more than in any of the other mitzvahs. Chapter 9. U'minayin ba koach lechach me'al Sinai. He says, so where does this ability come from? From Mount Sinai. This, to be able to carry this paradox of being above and below at the same time, that is something that the Shemitah takes from Mount Sinai itself. And that's why Shemitah was chosen to demonstrate the principle that all the details were already said at Mount Sinai. And Shemitah is, we explained that, but now he's saying it also wants to tell us that this connection that Shemitah has to Mount Sinai is not accidental. The connection that Shemitah has to Mount Sinai is because its ability to contain this paradox of being above and below, in the world and outside the world, at the same time, it receives from its connection to Mount Sinai. How so? The sages tell us, שבשעת מתן תורה התאספו כל הערים, וכל אחד מהם טען שיש לתת את התורה מעליו. So the sages tell us this beautiful medrash. It says that before God gave the Torah, all the mountains said, you should give the Torah on me. How תבוא טען שיש לו יתרון שהוא גבוה מן הערים? The Tabor mountain said, I'm the highest. How Carmel טען שהוא סייע לקריעת ים סוף? It said that it helped the splitting of the Red Sea. I don't remember how. So each one had a particular trait that would make it the ideal mountain upon which God should give the Torah. That's what the Medrash says. So what did the Almighty say? Which means tirtzu din. Why do you want to make this into a judgment? And I should judge between you. Who is the best? Harim gavnunim. Meaning gavnunim means you have pride, from the word gaiva. Harim gavnunim, הרי כיוון שאינכם מתגאים, הרי אתם גבנונים ובעלי מומים. So because you have this gaiva, you also are stooped over. You're like a, what do you call a person who's lame? He's lame. Okay? So he's hunched over and he's lame because of that. So that's what it made you into, that you have a hunch on your back. Because anybody who comes and says, because of my special qualities, choose me, this is that makes him into someone who's maimed. Instead, ההר חמד אלוקים לשבטו הוא הר סיני דמכריך מכל טוריה ושפל מכל הערים. The mountain that God chose to give the Torah on is Mount Sinai. Why? Because it's the lowliest of all the mountains. It had nothing to say in its favor. It couldn't list any of its good qualities. It's the most lowly, it's the most humble of all the mountains. But you can't understand this. But if you really want to take the lowliest, then why choose a mountain? Take the lowest valley and give the Torah there, in the lowest valley, if being lowly is such a great attribute and related to giving the Torah. Or at least you should have given the Torah on a plain. But if you're telling me that you need to put it on a mountain because it needs to be high, so why did you choose Mount Sinai? It should have been given on a mountain that's taller than Mount Sinai. So you have this interesting contradiction. On the one hand, Mount Sinai is the best because it's the humblest, it's the lowliest of all the mountains. On the other hand, if that's what you're looking for, why not put it into a valley? So why was the Torah given on Mount Sinai? Because God was looking for the unification of this paradoxical state. Meaning that on the one hand, שתהיה קיימת הגשמיות, ושיעשה ממנה עצמה אלוקות. That you want it to be a lowly thing, and yet you want it to be a high thing at the same time. And that's what Mount Sinai was. It was a mountain, which is high, but it acted with lowliness. And because it acted with that humility, with that lowliness, that was the paradoxical state that God was looking for. Something that on the one hand is a mountain, but on the other hand is acting like a valley. And what is this also? This is what we said in Shemitah. That on the one hand you're spiritual, it's all Shabbat LaHashem, Shabbos for Hashem. On the other hand, you're low, and you can connect to the mundane, and you continue to do your work during the Shemitah year. ומעניין זה של בהר סיני ניתן לבני ישראל הכוח לקיום מצוות שמיטה שהיא כללות כל המצוות, לעשות את הגשמיות גופה לאלוקות ולהשלים את הכוונה שדירה לו יתברך בתחתונים. So this is what God wanted all the mitzvahs to be, that they should on the one hand connect above, On the other hand, they should come down to change the mundane reality. And so they're bringing godliness down into mundane reality. And I think I mentioned this to you, but one of the things I noticed when I was in America now was that people drive very nice. Really, they drive just wonderfully. Nobody cuts, nobody changes lanes. Everybody's just happy where they are. And as a Jew, a frum Jew, you can't understand that. You look at that and you say, what's wrong with you people? What, you're telling me that you're not late for minyan, you're not late for learning, you're not late for Shabbos, you're not late for this, what's going on here? He says, yeah, they're not late. Why are they not late? Because there's nothing that dictates when they have to be there. A Jew's always in a hurry. Why is he in a hurry? Because he's always late, no matter what he does. Because I'm always with a purpose. When I go to work, I have a purpose. It's not the regular purpose, because I need to eat. I'll take a loan from the bank. I'll have what to eat. So no, because the Jew thinks about it. He says it's a mitzvah for me. It's a commandment for me to make a living and not to have to use loans, not to have to take charity. It's a mitzvah. And because it's a mitzvah, God is standing over me all the time, looking at me and saying, what am I doing? What am I doing with my time? So I can't waste my time. So I can't stand in line. I'm sorry. I would like to. I would like to be as polite as everyone else. But I can't. Because God is standing over me with a stopwatch. He's saying, are you on time for davening? Are you on time for learning? Are you on time for Shabbos? Are you on time for everything? Everything you need to do, you have a timer on you. And it's a very peculiar reality that a non-Jew will not necessarily connect with. Very hard for them to connect with it. What do you mean? Okay, it gets too hectic, just take a break. I can't take a break from Shacharis. I have to be in Shacharis. I can't say one day, today I'm going to take a rest from it. It doesn't work that way. I can't take a rest from anything I do. Right? So that's what it means, that I'm above and below at the same time. I have to be here in the world, but I have to bring down the godliness from above. Chapter 10. And that's what it means to make the physical reality into something godly. But it only happens if you have commandments. To make the reality, the mundane reality, a dwelling place for God below. Chapter 10. כך יובן הדבר שבכל מקום בא ביטוי מסיני, משה קיבל תורה מסיני, הלכה משה מסיני, כל מה שתמיד ותיק כדאי לחדש למענו משה מסיני, ועוד. והרי לכאורה לא חשוב כאן העניין של סיני, שכן העיקר שהקדוש ברוך הוא אמר את הדברים, ויתברך בכל מקום לתת פנוי מיני. ושמה הדיוק מסיני? So this also explains why in so many idioms from the sages we find the word Sinai. Why do you have to say Moshe received the Torah from Sinai? What's important is that Moshe received the Torah from God. Who cares where it was? Why do you mention this even? אלא שלפי האמור, but according to what we just said, יובן כך, you understand as follows, תכלית התורה היא לקשר שני הפכים. What the Torah was meant to create a paradoxical state where that which is above appears below. So the har v'machich לעשות בתחתונים ורע להתברך. So it's both a mountain and something that's lowly. That is what the Torah did. That is what the giving of the Torah did. That's why Shemitah has to be connected to Mount Sinai. Because it too is a carrier of paradox in a very revealed way. Even though all the mitzvahs are like that. All the mitzvahs have a connection above and we do them below. But by the Shemitah, that's the essence of it. Okay, so we'll have to end here.
So why didn't the Rebbe want Mashiach then?
What?
For what purpose did the Rebbe want Mashiach?
For us to do bigger and better things. Not to solve our problems.
So where's the Beis HaMikdash?
Mashiach will build it. That's a bigger and better problem to solve. Much better than the question of, for instance, should they be building another road somewhere? Okay? The question of building a Beis HaMikdash is a much more interesting and a much more powerful problem and question to answer. It leads you.
All this moderation that says the when Mashiach comes, the Goyim are going to respect the Jews and behave themselves.
It's happening now, even now.
Yeah, you see Israel respecting the Jews. They're going out killing as many as they can lay their hands on.
Islam, like everything else, doesn't have free will. Because they don't have free will. They're reflecting for us how we are. And that's a known fact by them. They say it openly. That if the Jews were connected to what they claim they're connected to, then they say at least that we wouldn't have an argument. It doesn't mean that they wouldn't be murderous, because maybe that's what they enjoy doing in their lives. Okay? But it would mean that they would have to respect, and they do know how to respect things, but they would have to respect us. But the fact that of the 6 million Jews living in Eretz Yisrael, only 1 million, let's say, or maybe 1.5 million, maybe 2 million even, act like we're the descendants of the children of Israel, so they capitalize on that. And for them, that's a sign that they're right. But these are not the people who left here 2,000 years ago.
טוב, נמשיך מחר.